I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, October the 27th, brought to you in part by Cargill Safeguard Nutra Beef, which is a full line of cattle feeds and minerals expertly formulated to meet the unique nutritional requirements that match the animal's performance requirements, stage of development, and phase of production. For more information, go to Merck Animal Health. Follow through, and we're looking for a higher market on fat cattle, cash fats again this week. We know it's going to be higher. We don't know how much higher. Your packers are not even avoiding the fact that they're really hungry for cattle. In the few brick and mortar fat cattle auctions that we've seen, they've been pretty aggressive there, but we really haven't seen any cash fat cattle trade so far this week. A little bit in Iowa like we always see, but for sure nothing in the southern plains. And the southern plains may be the place where we gain the most ground this week, being that October live cattle futures are sitting close to 151.5. We assume that the southern plains could get 150 this week. They were at 148 last week, but they might be harder to trade with than the northern plains, because if they don't get 150 or better, then they're going to have to, of course, give up a little money on their trade out for their hedges there. But we're just waiting for that to finish up. We didn't see hardly any trade on Wednesday. Like I said, looking into Thursday, we expect the trade to start on Thursday. I don't think it's really going to matter what the board does. We're going to see higher fat cattle. It's just how much higher are we going to see. But your packers are really hungry for cattle to keep up with this big kill that they've been putting on. The chain speeds continue to run at a high rate of speed. We're higher than last week, and we had 674,000 head harvest last week, which is huge. One of the biggest that we've had all year going into these tighter supplies. Your packers do have a lot of cattle in cold storage, but they're expecting to be shorter on cattle, and they don't want to have to just keep going until they get to $2 a pound for fat cattle. They're going to have to start bleeding some of that in. And like I said, we're expecting another big slaughter harvest this week. And so far this year, up through the first 3 quarters and beyond, we've seen your cattle slaughter running ahead of last year. And we've also seen your beef production far ahead of last year. Of course, we're running at higher weights there, so that's what makes that. But your fourth quarter projections for protein production are down for the most part. Down on beef, because we know we're running into tighter supplies. Down on pork, down on turkey, but chicken is expected to be a lot bigger production than last year. So we're kind of running right there. Our export forecasts for the fourth quarter are all running down except for pork. And even though our pork production has been running behind last year, we are expecting a big pork export for the fourth quarter. So I assume we'll see higher prices there for your pork. But no independent cattle or hog feeders left anymore. We lost that back in the late 90s, and if we don't get something done here on our cattle trade and on this Cattle Price Discovery and Transparency Act, which has had opportunities to get up for a vote, but your National Corporate Beef Association keeps knocking it down, and we're into this mid-year or midterm elections here, and it's just a tumultuous time to try to get that bill pushed forward. But it's not dead yet, guys. We are still pushing that, and we may even go past the elections and still try to push that. But I know several of y'all have asked about that bill here of late, because I haven't talked about it a whole lot, because there hasn't been a whole lot of news in it, other than we get close to getting it up for a vote, and then for some reason, whether it's political due to votes with the Senate, or if it's because of lobbyists with the NCBA pushing it down, we just haven't been able to get it up there. But it's not dead yet by any means. Our feeder buyers are getting pretty hungry too, those that have a few empty pens, but they're wanting some green grass yearlings, and there's just no green grass yearlings left. Once in a while in a few sales you see a few loads here and there, and they go really high, but for the most part we're not going to see a whole lot of grass yearlings because there hasn't been any grass. It's just been too dry. So the only real feeder cattle other than big calves that we're going to see have been lot backgrounded, been put in a lot somewhere, and of course your cattle feeders are still going to buy them, but they're not going to aggressively go after them like they are these grass yearlings, which like I said, there's just hardly any of them left, and they stick out like a sore thumb when they sell because they sell so much higher than the rest of the yearling offering. Let's talk about your board. On Wednesday, October live cattle futures were down 22 cents. Doesn't really make any difference what October does. Your October feeders were down a little bit too, but all of your back months on both fats and feeder futures were up. We're just getting so close here to maturization or the end of the contract for your October contracts. It doesn't really matter what they're doing. They're just jostling around here right before they end. But October live cattle down 22 on Wednesday at 151.45. Like I said, 151.5 looks pretty good to your Southern Plains feeders. December live cattle up 27 cents at 153.57, and in just a few days that's going to be our spot market. Your back months on live cattle down a dime, and that was October of 23 contract, to up as much as 40 cents, and that was February of 24. And like I said, we're still in the beginning stages of a big bull market here, guys. October feeder cattle were down 17 cents. I still think they're trading at quite a premium to your index levels here as late as it is in this contract month, but sitting at 176.42. November was up 90 at 178.82, and your back months on feeder cattle were up 40 cents to up $1.05. Corn Chicago Board of Trade futures were down 1.5 cents a bushel at 6.85. Beans were down just 1/4 cent a bushel at 13.81 3/4. Fat cattle trade, like I said, just hardly anything going on. Of course, we don't get to see what goes on in Colorado. Iowa had about 800 head confirmed, ranging from 151 to mostly 152 live basis, and a little bit of dress sales at 236, which was near the top of last week's range. But that is nothing. We have not gotten anywhere close to establishing our market on fat cattle. Nebraska, Kansas, and Texas have not sold a hoof. They're dug in at higher prices. Packers are going to have to come to them here today on Thursday, and likely a little bit of Friday trade too. Box beef cutout values have kind of settled down after being up so big earlier in the week, but choice cut sitting at 260.86. Your rib primal, the highest cut, is at a high for 2022, which we would expect with a lot of holiday season buying. But despite inflation, they're still going up. And like I talked several visits ago, I don't think your higher price cuts are going to pull back that much because of inflation. But and even your lower cuts, I don't think are going to pull that back that much because of inflation. People, they may not have a lot of extra money, but they still got to eat. But choice cuts on Wednesday afternoon at 260.86, down 57 cents. Selects were up $1.25 at 228.60. Like I said earlier, your slaughter running at a rampant pace. 384,000 head harvested through the first 3 days of this week. That's 3,000 more than last week's big week and 18,000 more than the same week a year ago. Talk about what else is going on. Livestock Risk Services with Dakota Moss, based out of the Exchange Building at Oklahoma National Stockyards here in Oklahoma City. They are your LRP specialists, guys. And if you haven't noticed some of these strike prices for your LRPs going out forward, you can buy these light calves even at inflated prices, and you can still lock in a pretty decent profit there if you've got something to feed them. So if you guys are sitting on feed of any kind, whether it's forage or put up feed, you need to be looking at that and don't miss an opportunity to make some money. Talk about your feeder market, your real-time index on DV auction. Late in the day on Wednesday, set at 174.70. That's up 11 cents from Tuesday's close. and will continue to go up, especially when we get some of those premium sales in the Northern Plains, and we had some of those I'll tell you about here in just a second. Check out a kind of a yearling special they're having at Mocan Livestock Market in Butler, Missouri. I talked to Jim Herzog on Wednesday, and he said they've got about 1,350 true yearlings going to be coming through the sale there at Mocan here today on Thursday. Several of them are coming off grass, and like I said earlier, you just can't find them anymore. Included in their grass offering is 570 black yearling steers coming off the Acres Ranch right there in Missouri. And so don't miss that sale. Get your order into Mocan Livestock for some of those green grass yearlings. Talk about your big sales on Wednesday. OKC West, El Reno, Oklahoma, 5,800 head. You compare that to a year ago, just 5,300 head. We know we're running on light supplies, but they're still coming to town early. We get late this fall and early into the winter time, and I don't know what we're going to do for receipts, guys, even on feeder cattle and calves. But feeder steers at El Reno, $2 to $4 higher. Feeder heifers mostly steady. Wean calves, $2 to $4 higher. And ballers still steady. And normally this late in the fall, we see your demand for ballers just completely evaporate. But there's just tight supplies, and we know that those cattle are going to be worth a lot of money down the road. So still finding several friends on your ballers, especially if they've had 1 and especially 2 rounds of respiratory shots before they bring them into the sale. But stick out deal at El Reno was a big quote there. 65 thinner flesh steers weighed 802 at 187. I told you those green grassers stick out like a sore thumb. How about winter livestock in Dodge City, Kansas? 3,300 head there. Year ago they had 3,000, still running ahead of the game, and they are really been dry up there in south central Kansas, guys. But feeders had a higher undertone. Calves were kind of uneven, but poor market reporting there. They would have thought they could have got a firm market call there with 3,300 head. But stick out deal in Dodge City was 75 heifers, weighed 645 at 173.50. Big time quote there. Here's the wettest stick out sale of the day was Bassett Livestock Auction in Bassett, Nebraska. 3,100 head there, mostly calves. But you look at this automated market report out of Bassett Livestock Auction, you see 320 head of 4-weight steer calves, average 442, with a weighted average price of all those 4 weights at $238.73. 792 head of 5-weight steers in Bassett, average 539, the weighted average price of $218.59. 525 head of 6-weight steers in Bassett, average 641, the weighted average price on all those 6 weights of $207.95. Very impressive. And then they're keeping heifers back in that country too. Your biggest test of heifers was 352 head of 4-weight heifer calves in Bassett, average 461 at $203.55. Talk about your stick out sale in Bassett on one individual consignment was 159 head, 660 pound steers at $2.19 a pound. Wow. How about Veneta, Oklahoma? We don't talk about them very often, but my good friend and mentor Kenny Wilcox auctioneers that sale and sent me a couple of quotes out of there, especially this one on some 3-colored heifers. 75 head, weighed 704 at 167 in Veneta, Oklahoma. Pretty impressive there. How about Fort Pierre Livestock and a special calf sale there? 95 head, 511 pound steer calves, bring 245. Are you kidding me? How about Albion, Nebraska? Albion Livestock sells 130 head, 910 pound steers at 189.10. But the most impressive quote that I saw on Wednesday in your Macrocin No BS top quote for the day come out of Hub City Livestock in Aberdeen, South Dakota. 65 black steers off grass, weighed 953 at 192 1/4. And that's your feeder flash for Thursday.